And given that now we have sort of driven it a little bit, can you make some more noise, please?
Hey guys, Jimmy here, and welcome back to another video. And this is the video that ever since the end of the season I've wanted to make, because in today's video we're going to be reflecting on my first year as a racing driver, I suppose, or driving in a real life racing car. Whether I'm a racing driver or not, that's up to you to decide really. I'm not really sure where I sit at the moment. But regardless, I've had a full year of driving, loads of highs, equally as many lows, and I thought it would be really nice to sort of one, reflect on it, and two, sort of answer maybe some questions or talk about some things that maybe were not apparent or were not explained or spoken about in the videos, because those videos that I've made are meant to be sort of like a really fun to follow series that is quite honest, but of course you can never be 100% inclusive of everything because of the time limit of the videos. If there are any questions you have that I don't get to in this video, then feel free just to leave them in the comments below and I'll try and get to them when I can. And I'll say that if you enjoy the video at any point, same as I always say, hit the like button, subscribe if you want to as well, and let me know if you like this sort of content, because the racing content, I think when you're driving, is a lot easier. When you're talking about it, not so much. So let me know what you think of it. Anyway, I think that we should probably start at the start, because one of the questions I've been asked a lot over the course of this year is, how the hell did this happen? How the hell did I get the chance to drive in IRL this season? First of all, for those who don't know, for the majority of this year, I've been driving a car called a Prague R1 in the Brit Car Endurance Championship in the Prague category. The Prague R1 is a little baby prototype, lots of downforce, slick tyres as well. Produces about 350 horsepower from a 2-litre Formula Runner engine and weighs about 650 kilos. So it's damn light. I think it's something like 500 horsepower per tonne, which for your first season of racing, it's quite a bit. So it was definitely a bit of an obstacle, or a mountain to climb I should say, when I first heard that I'd be driving it. And that all came about around May time last year. I was actually, which means I remember it even more, I was actually on the way to my granddad's house after he passed away, sadly, in the same month, to sort of go in there and sort things out. And I got a phone call on the way up from a guy called Mark Harrison, who is the big boss man at Prague Cars in the UK, who then spoke to me about something called a guest driver program that Prague were running for the 2021 Brit Car season. Now, I'm going to be completely honest and say that I had not heard of Prague at all before this phone call. No idea who they were. Zero idea. So when he said to me, well, Jimmy, we're doing this guest driver program, we're going to try and get some sort of personalities and influencers in the car over the course of next year. When he said that, my first thought was, okay, he wants me to help promote that. No problem. I get jobs like that all the time. But then after that, he said, of course, we want you to be one of the drivers, Jimmy. Come drive our Prague next year. And I just remember thinking, like, all right, this is not very funny, Mark. Don't joke at me like this. Because maybe I do have to say it, but for my entire life, for as long as I can remember, you know when you're a kid, right? When you're a child, you're like 4 years old, and you go, I want to be an astronaut when I grow up. I want to be a firefighter when I grow up. I always wanted to be a racing driver, and that didn't go away. It's never gone away. I've always wanted to do that. It's why I drive so many pretend cars on the PC and whatnot, because that's what I've wanted to do my entire life. And then, just like that, I had someone offering me that, which was insane. So of course I just absolutely bit his arm off. Yes, 100%. Tell me more. And I sat on that information that I was going to be driving that car from May of 2020 to I think February of 21, when the announcement was finally made that I'd be driving for Prague that season. Making that video and sort of showing that to everybody was like reliving that phone call experience again, because I got to then actually share it with the people that I cared about, you guys of course, and all my friends and whatnot, that I was going to get to live a bit of a personal dream. And you guys were all too kind in every comment that I saw and read. So but that was the first bit done. And when that sort of like subsided, I was like, oh yeah, cool, great, I'm driving the car next season. I was like, oh shit, how do I drive this car? What have I got to do? So the Praga, because it has such a high power to weight ratio, you need to have an A license in the UK to drive it, or a race national license, I think it's actually called, but I always call it A and B because it's easy to remember. And that's where the first massive stress of the season came, because right at the start of the season, sort of, you know, March, April time, the UK COVID regulations were sort of just doing this, up and down, up and down, up and down. No one really knew what was going on, which meant that a lot of race fixtures got cancelled. And my first race was going to be in April, end of April, with Praga. So I had to do 6 races before that point, from that tiny little window from, I think it was like the middle of March to the end of April, which meant that I then had to do, we worked it out, it was basically 4 race weekends in a row, consisting each of 2 races, which of course adds up to 8, not 6, and we did the 8 to be safe, in case I retired from any of the ones before, which I actually ended up retiring from my 7th of 8 races, so that was actually kind of a good thing to do. But the absolute stress that went with that, trying to scramble around to find anyone to give us a drive, was absolutely mad. And I want to actually talk about cost of that here, right now, because before I get anywhere near Praga, the cost of getting my A license, if I have to put a rough figure on it, let's say, let me get my calculator out very quickly. I'm going to give you an absolute, just a completely rough figure here. So with my old calculator right here, to do the first 4 weekends of racing, comes in at about £4,000, roughly £1,000 per weekend of car hire to do that. Basically, I'd say all in all, it cost me about £6,000 to get my to get my A license, which is quite a lot, as you can imagine. And that's not a specific amount. If you want like a specific amount for racing, then Misha's video on the same sort of subject is great. But yeah, £6,000 before I even set foot in the Praga to get to that point. When people say racing is expensive, it really fucking is. All right. Now we'll move forward to when I actually first drove the Praga, which was at Anglesey. My first test in the car, which was only about 2 weeks before the Silverstone race itself, which of course is a bit insane, really. I had one of my license races between that test and the first round at Silverstone, so it really was that close to get my license to actually go racing at Silverstone. But I remember sitting in the car for the first time at Anglesey and just being absolutely terrified. I've never been so scared of anything in my life, because these little Pragas, they're worth quite a fair bit of money. I think that buying one new is something like 200 grand. It's a lot of money, you know. And here I was, essentially a complete amateur, had never driven on slicks before, by the way, well, outside of karts, getting into this machine with 300 plus horsepower, aero, slicks, all that good stuff, weighs literally nothing, and you are strapped in front and center. It's a center-mounted cockpit in the Praga, so you really are part of the machine when you start it up for the first time. And I remember turning the car on, and my heart, I could hear my heart over the engine, I felt like. I think it's one of those things that obviously isn't quite real, but that's what I was focusing on, was my heart going absolutely fucking insane. I remember coming out the pit lane, flipping the limiter off, and just dabbing the throttle ever so slightly and shifting up to third really early, and just being like, oh god, that's a lot. That's a lot. Jesus Christ. And if you're familiar with the layout of Anglesey, you have sort of 2 corners, then you go onto the back straight, so to speak. And I said to myself, you absolutely need to get on the throttle, full throttle down the straight. So I went down a gear, into 3rd gear, I went up to 4th early, I was just cruising around, into 3rd gear, and I went, right, okay, point it straight and nail it. So I did that. Luckily it was in sort of high enough a gear that I wouldn't have to worry about any sort of wheel spin or anything. And I felt what the car could do. To feel the surge of the turbo as it comes in, and then just get pinned back in your seat, and immediately you realise what the car is about, what it is. And up until then, I remember sitting in my hotel room before going to this test, and saying to myself, like, you need to leave. You're not good enough to be here. All these people are racing drivers. You're not. You're an imposter. You're a pretender. You shouldn't be here. And I was telling myself that over and over again, some sort of really unhealthy mantra. And that moment where I pinned the throttle, going down the back straight, just washed all of that away. And I'm so glad that I was able to overcome that, because that's the closest I've come to giving up all season, was before I even started. Mad. Huh? We'll jump forward to Silverstone now, because I'm aware that I've not even got to the start of the season yet, and we're quite a bit into this video already. But Silverstone for me was was a very odd experience mentally, because although I didn't really talk about it at the time, I think about 2 days before the race, I actually broke up with my long-term girlfriend, and that was in my head more than the race was, because it came at a really bad time, of course, but those things are... I mention it because it's relevant, and because it was something that I was experiencing during the time. Obviously, I was still there to do a job. I was physically fine, and I was still looking forward to the challenge of driving the car, but that was in the back of my head the entire weekend, so I was quite... peaks and troughs, I think it's fair to say. Like, sort of being absolutely pumped that I got to drive this car, but also being just miserable because obviously having broken up with somebody. But I got to the circuit, and immediately I felt different from how I felt at Anglesey. At Anglesey, I felt like I shouldn't have been there, but at Silverstone, I felt a little bit different. I don't know why. Maybe it was the confidence. Maybe it's because I was only 1.8 seconds off Gemma at Anglesey, so I thought, you know what, let's try and bring that gap down a bit more. But it's also when I first met the other drivers properly, in a racing situation, because testing's a bit different, but obviously meeting Abby Eaton, great to meet her. Meeting Gordy for the first time as well, and getting to meet just the rest of the Prague crew was really damn cool. But I remember sitting there in the pit lane, ready to go out in the session, my first ever time onto a live racetrack with cars that weren't Praguers, and I remember just all I could see were people, like with cameras or sort of looking around, just because there was a very weird thing I've not experienced before, where people sort of knew that I was driving and racing in my first big boy race, and people were there to come and see me, even in this sort of COVID conditions where not many people were allowed at the circuit, no spectators allowed, just really paddock people. Even all the paddock people came to like say hello and talk. It was very, very surreal, because I felt then I had pressure to actually try and perform, because these guys were watching me. So that was a bit of a weird moment, but managed to overcome that and then go out for the first test. Car was great, etc. Let's talk about the races, because again I'm getting a bit bogged down in the pre-stuff before. The 2 races at Silverstone went really well. We came 4th in both races, and I did the majority, I think, of the first race because of a safety car, and Jem did the opposite in the second race. So, and this is, I won't talk about the first race in particular, because it's why I realised that I wasn't quite fit enough to drive the car properly. So I did quite an extensive regime over winter, just to try and lose a little bit of weight and gain a little bit of sort of cardio fitness as well. And it worked out. It worked fairly well. I went from being, I think it was 82 kilos at the start of it, to about 72 kilos, 73 kilos or so at the start of the first round. But even so, the thing that went first was my neck. And it wasn't the corner you'd think it is, because of course Silverstone, we were in an international there. It was a very fast right-hander at the start. It was the one at the back. It was the coming on to the Hamilton straight. That was the corner that did my neck in. It was a constant 2G or so around the corner. And for the last 10 minutes of that race, I had my neck on the headrest like that. And I still have a mark on my helmet now, right there, from when that happened. But regardless, we ended up in 4th place in both races. So a really strong start to the championship. And then we go on to Snetterton, which was... Snetterton is probably the most scared I've been all season. To get in the car, to drive the car. Because those who don't know, Snetterton was it was downpour. Race 1 was incredibly wet. Practice before then and qualifying was even worse. I actually genuinely think that we shouldn't have been out there in qualifying. And something that I've not said before, but the guys at Prague took us all into the truck and said, listen, okay, the car isn't really suited to this. In this, in these like monsoon conditions, because we're very low, we're downforce cars, and we can drive in the wet well on wet tyres. But if it gets to the point where like there is aquaplaning going on, this car can't deal with it very well. Which car does? But this one, because it was light, suffered quite a bit. And I remember them saying to us, like, guest drivers, if you don't want to drive, we will not hold it against you, because they genuinely thought like it was a risk for us to be out there. But then then there's this weird sort of situation that happened where no driver wanted to be the one to say, no, I'm not going to do it. I remember looking around at all the other guest drivers thinking, is anyone going to say it? Should I say it? I looked at Jay Morton, and of course he didn't give a fuck. He would drive on anything. So I thought, we race. We go out there. I will deal with whatever I've got to deal with. But yeah, let's actually talk about how it went, because In race 1, I started the car from pretty much the back of the field because qualifying was terrible for us. I had, I think, maybe one lap where I actually got to get around in one piece. I set the fastest lap out of me and Jem in the wet, which was something, but it was still terrible for us to be right at the back of the grid. So neither of us got on with the car there. And in the race, the spray was so severe. And I know it's one of those cliche things that people say over and over again, but the spray is to the point that, like, how do I explain this? Think about 2 meters in front of you. Okay, you cannot see the car in front of you. You can just see their flashing light, their rain light. You cannot see the car. That is what the spray is like. And you're doing 120 mile an hour, 130 down the straight, and you're aquaplaning. The car's moving all over the place in a straight line as it's skating across the water. And you have to keep your foot in it. You have to keep your foot in it. And I overtook a couple of people. It was okay, and of course, pitted in the end. And unfortunately, Jem, I think, spun on the third corner of her outlap, and the car wouldn't restart. Starter motor needed replacing, and that was our first DNF of the season, which was a real shame. But at the same time, it was good to sort of get it out of the way and experience that DNF and what that felt like. So for race 2, Jem would start, and I'm not sure if maybe it was a confidence thing or something happened or something weird happened, but Jem had problems, I guess, getting the car up to speed. I mean, to the point where she was seconds a lap slower than the guys around us, which meant that I had a lot to do when I got in the car, and I was really comfy, actually. Finally pushing the car properly, it was one of the times where I felt, you know what, I'm actually doing all right here. And I had my first sort of big overtake on Jay Morton, where he was quite a few seconds a lap slower than me, but he was doing a good job of defending, and I just didn't quite have the confidence to stick when I'd be inside on the brakes. And then when I finally did, I sort of set him up. It was a proper nice move. I made him think I was going one way, then darted to the other way and took the place, and it was a absolutely great moment. But I suspected during the race, but then later found out that for some reason we were put out on a wet setup and not on a dry setup. So whilst I was matching the times of the guys in front, we were doing that with a wet setup car. So I remember coming out of the race and being sort of frustrated, thinking like, what could have been if the car's in the right setup? Could I have caught them? Maybe not. But yeah, it was a really, really sketchy weekend. Of course, I watched Jack Fabi got absolutely smashed in a pit lane by some BMW being an absolute
sensible man
on pit exit and just gunning it into another car. Like, what legend, right? And I saw none of that. I was just at the pit lane. I didn't even know it happened till after the thing. And the first thing I did was go to ask if Jack was okay, and luckily he was. But I was starting to now get a real feel of what motor racing could be if it wasn't going right. Because there's nothing in sim racing that prepares you for that, those little moments. You know, there are times where you have sort of unfair DNFs or where things go wrong, but for driving in those sort of conditions where it's so wet that you can't see where you're going, and you are, and I use the word and I mean it, scared. There was fear there. That was, yeah. Nothing in sim racing can prepare you for that. Nothing. After that was Alton Park, and I think the less said about that, the better. Really, we had 2 big issues. Really, we had a terrible time of things. We had basically steering wheel issues the whole weekend, and that is the most frustrated I've been this season, because as time was going on, I was finding myself getting quicker and quicker in the car. It got to the point where I was now qualifying the car. I was the one starting to be given like the anchor role, which is driving second, with the exception, of course, of the first race at Alton Park. But that was all just a big shit show, that first race. First of all, we got released from our pit box too late, so we actually missed the start, meaning I had to start from the back of the damn field, behind every bit of traffic possible. And you lose so much time doing that, so much time. But even after that start, managed to clear the traffic, car was fast, I was keeping Abby behind me, which I was super happy with. And then I remember going up to Druids, going to downshift, thinking, okay, maybe I didn't hit the downshift properly, because it didn't go down into gear. And when you don't downshift when you mean to downshift, you have a weird corner because you don't get the engine braking. You sort of overspeed a little bit, and I did that. I thought, okay, well, I've still got the advantage, I'm all right. Then went down to the last corner, I think it's called Lodge, went to shift down, just so slow, really slow gear changes. Like, oh no, it's gone, it's gone. And then coming up the hill and just not being able to go into gear, and just my heart sinking and thinking like, come on, what have I got to do to have a good race? You know, what have I got to do to make this work out for us? We had so much confidence going into that weekend, so much confidence, because we both felt like we had found something in the car. Jem felt more confident as well. I felt more confident. We were sort of fifth or sixth usually in practice, which is good because we've been down the bottom before. So we were just, you know, we knew that there were a couple of issues. We had a good chance at a podium, which they often are in Britcar. Then to see it just evaporate again for no real fault of your own, or even Prague, it's just another electrical thing that went wrong. It was, yeah, annoying. And having to drive the car around in fifth gear was really difficult. And I came into the pit box and just about managed to get the car into the pit lane. And I got out of the car and just, I guess, went to just vent a bit, came back, told everyone what happened, what was going on. Jem opted to go out there anyway, but had to retire the car like a lap later because the steering wheel was just still broken. And that was another DNF for us. And that was a frustrating one because we knew we had pace. Race 2 came around, same thing happened again. We thought we had the car fixed, went out on the first lap. Jem came out on the formation, I came in on the formation lap to say the car still wasn't fixed. They managed to get a new wheel on there, which actually still had the same issue, but to a lot lesser extent. And we did finish the race, albeit like in 7th place or something like that. So Alton Park was just one to forget. And you can see that in the footage. The only upside to that is it was the first time we had fans at an event, and it was so amazing seeing everyone there like cheering me on, and very surreal seeing people like in the grandstand with like Polizia Panarino cardboard things they've written on, or like flags or whatever, and people there actually supporting us, which was just amazing. So even though I came out the weekend feeling frustrated with the driving and the racing, the actual feeling of being there and seeing so many fans there was awesome. It really was. I smile about it every time I think about it because it really was such a nice feeling. And that sort of trend of like we've got potential but things keep happening then went over to Silverstone, the 2-hour race, where I'm going to be quite brief about this race because it was a very frustrating time for me. But so I started the race. I started the race on slick tyres. We qualified, I think, 7th. It was a wet qualifying earlier in the day, so it was a bit tricky getting the times in. I got blocked on my last lap where I was like a second and a bit up. So, I mean, it's one of those things where we're just wrong place, wrong time in qualifying. Got off to an okay start, but got jumped by the GTR, which is annoying because that GTR is so fast in the straights that it can just pass you, and then you just have to follow it through all the slow stuff and the medium speed stuff. And then you can't get it on exit because it just pulls away from you. So that was a frustrating thing that happened first of all. And then, of course, we had the rain shower, and I knew the rain was coming. I felt the rain in the car when you're driving around. Driving in slicks in the rain is a bit sketch, but you can do it as long as you are being reasonable with it. If you're like driving the same lines, same application, same braking force, you're going to crash, 100%. But you sort of know just to bring it down slowly as the rain comes. And I remember seeing Charlie Martin in the gravel, seeing other Praguers spun as I was driving around, thinking, okay, well, I'm still going good. This is all right. I'm still on course. Maybe I've dropped a bit of time to those around me, but I've not made any big mistakes, which is the important thing. And then I got the call on the radio saying, come in for wets, come in for wets. And I could see blue sky. And I remember saying on the radio, like, no, let me stay out, it's fine. And I kept being told, come in, box this lap. Now, Jimmy, you need to come in. And apparently they didn't hear me object to this on the radio, which is again a frustrating thing. We had problems with radio the entire year in this car, but I objected quite a lot. But regardless, you know, I thought, well, listen, they know best. I don't know as much as these guys do. I've only been around for a little bit. They've been around for a long time. I'll come in, change the tyre to the wets, and almost immediately it stopped raining. So we were fasted for about 3 or 4 laps, and then as the water just disappeared, it was just hellish, driving 40 minutes or so on a tyre that just couldn't take it. And for after the race, for about an hour, I had such extreme, I don't know what to call it, like there's such extreme vibration in the car from the wet tyre just chewing itself apart, that my hands, I couldn't feel them for like an hour afterwards. And I remember just being so defeated because, again, decent pace at Silverstone. I don't think I was too far off the pace of old Stiggy, Ben Collins, which is, again, amazing for me to think that I can be anywhere near that guy. Yeah, I mean, like, that sort of whole middle part of the season was just a big low. And I think the lowest of the low was Brands Hatch, where, of course, we very sadly lost one of the marshals at that massive T1 crash in the touring car race that happened between our races. And I remember then thinking, like, is it fair that I get to go racing. I do the dangerous bit, but this is the guy that pays for it, and he pays the ultimate price, you know, for me getting to go racing. And I found it very, very difficult to then justify getting back into the car again after that. I don't know. People will say it's racing and stuff like that happens, but maybe I think maybe I was one of those people a little bit until I then experienced it happen. And that is something that, again, you'll never be prepared for as a sim racer. I remember hearing the crash and then hearing no cars and no noise. And silence at a racetrack is one of the worst things you can hear. I still have trouble talking about it now, actually. And then, I mean, a happier end, I guess, to the story of this season. We went to Donington. And, of course, the big thing is that I changed teammates for the last season. I've been racing with Jem all season, and I ended up racing with Gordy for the last 2 rounds. Now, there is a reason for that, and the reason for that is something that I can't quite talk about just yet, but it wasn't just a random thing that happened. Of course, I'm very grateful for Jem for sort of helping me when I was first starting, when I wasn't feeling like I could even drive the car, to give me that sort of confidence to get in the car. But yeah, like I said, there are things happening hopefully in the future that I'll be able to talk about soon. And also, Gordy is my driver coach as well. He's the one that's been helping me get faster this season. You've seen him over the course of the season in various videos calling me a wimp when I'm not being flat through some of the corners and all that. But yeah, so I ended up racing with him for Donington. And immediately I knew that we had a decent chance of a good result. Our best result up until this point of the season for that 87 car was 4th at the first race, or first races, at Silverstone, which sort of says a lot about how our season actually went. In practice, I knew my own times. I was comparing. So I think the important thing is that the Prague Cup primarily has a pro-am sort of situation to it. So there's one pro driver and one am driver. And of course, I'm the am driver, so I compare myself to fellow ams. And I was noticing in the practice session that I was probably the quicker am. It was between me and I think Richard Wells, for the am drivers out there. And of course, Gordy was the quickest pro. So I thought to myself, you know what? This could actually be something. You know, we could actually have a chance here. But you don't think about time stuff too much, because you know that, like, situations change and cars might not be running at their full potential. But at the time sheet, at a glance, it looked really good. Then qualifying came. Gordy puts it on the front row of the grid, and I think we can have this is it, podium. This is the chance. And then going down to T1 for the first time, obviously the massive incident that happened there. I saw Richard Wells in front of me sideways, and I thought to myself, it's over. I can't get round this. And then almost at the same time as I was having that thought, it was like an instinct. Just throw the car to the left, get into the gravel. And then I was in like gravel. I was like, right, you're in gravel. You've got to keep going. You've got to keep the throttle on. Only a little bit. Just keep moving. Don't get bogged down. Because in gravel, of course, like, you just sink, and that's it. You're done. And I actually took a very wide line, because I didn't want to move the car sideways at all in case it spun on the gravel. So I was just trying to keep straight as much as I could, got out of it, avoided the carnage down the bottom, and somehow came round. I think like in 10th overall after that, so lost quite a few places, but managed to get back up to, I think it was like 5th place or something by the time that stint ended. I said 7th in the video, but I think it was actually 5th, including a really nice overtake on Charlie, which I was really proud of. And then sitting on that pit wall and watching Gordy just smash through the field, and sort of realising that the win might be coming. None of it felt real. It felt like I was having like a dream or something. Because I know I said as much in the video of that race, but like, that's a lifelong dream for me. That's something being fulfilled, and it was happening before my eyes. I just didn't know how to react to it. How do you react to it? There's no set way of doing it. I went on like a bit of a roller coaster. Like, my brain went back to the first time that I streamed on YouTube, and what I was doing and how I was and what my habits were, who I was as a person, to where I was right there at that moment, standing on the pit wall waiting for my teammate to come across the start-finish line. It was some level of insanity, and my brain still can't quite comprehend it. And every time I walk into this room now, I look into the desk behind me, and you guys see it on the streams, and I see those 2 trophies, and I think, you know, you did it. You've done it. All those years of trying has led to this point, and you can be proud, because there are so many things in my head that stop me from enjoying anything that maybe I achieve or something happens. I always think, oh yeah, but someone could do better, or someone else could do better, or like, you don't belong to be there, you're only there because you're a YouTuber, blah 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 blah. And some of those things are true, but I will not let anyone take that away from me, not even myself. That is my life's greatest achievement there, and maybe that isn't a good priority to have, but you know what, I don't give a fuck. I am so happy that I get to walk in and say that I've done that alongside someone who taught me to go that fast and is going to hopefully teach me to go a bit faster in the future. Well guys, I'm not sure how long this video is. It's about 2 hours or so of recording of me rambling at a camera. Hopefully my based editor Chan can make it into something nice and interesting to watch. But I want to end off just by saying that this season for me has been an absolute dream. It really has. To get to do this, I know how lucky I am. I know how fortunate I am to get to go racing. Next year's plans are pretty cool too. I can't tell you about them just yet, but obviously, hopefully, I'll be able to soon. And the fact that I get to even talk to you about racing plans and stuff like that is it's a novelty that's not worn off yet. And I'm just eternally grateful that I get to be in this position and do these things. Because when I started doing YouTube and all that, this was so far away that I just felt like it was completely unrealistic to even dream of this. And now here I am talking about potential season 2. So yeah, amazing. Thank you for your support this year, guys. It has made a difference, 100%, to see you all behind me, especially in the difficult bits as well. To have you there and your support has been great, and to share the success of you at the end was even greater. So thank you all so much. That's it for now. A big thank you to my patrons and sponsors and all the people that support the channel. Take care. Have an awesome day. See you next time.